AudiobookHomoPosterus3, a novel, the story of a budding scientist who makes a time machine and journeys to 3000 plus AD. There, he happens to learn of the horrendous future the human race has in store. Written by Roy T. James. Part 3, Chapter 5 Towards the Climax. Now, gentlemen, I did not make any effort to hide my glee when we reassembled. Having validated all my initial findings, let me try my hand at prophecy. My prediction about the future of our race is this. I began. Human race is just passing through the crest of accommodating nature, tolerant behavior, and progressive outlook. If we consider the world to have passed through Archaic period, Middle Ages, Machine Age, Atomic Age, Space Age and Information Age to reach the present, the future can undoubtedly be termed as the age of the irrational. The future of the human race, notwithstanding the multitude of theories in this regard with imaginative predictions, looks quite bleak. Maybe, human beings of the coming eras will be better used to the irrational. The future, with the disappearance of moderate societies and the growth of the orthodox ones, beckons us with hard times, unspeakably so, for women. All hopes are not lost. Viagra may prove its mettle. The most serious problem facing the mankind shall be nipped in the bud. I brought my discourse to a conclusion, and there was loud applause. It even compensated for the rather cold feelings the ambience of silence had been causing all the while. Keenan was the first to butt in. I liked you correlating FGM with reduced sexual capability. It, of course, looks probable, but how come you followed such a non-intuitive line, though it looks quite natural as an answer? Joe said, my question too is on similar lines. Also, what we had been thinking of, as effects of climate, a dormant uncomfortable feeling among humans, seems to have been successfully attributed to sexual inadequacy. Great indeed. I was glad such questions came up. Since my very young days, I have been observing the prevalence of sexual organs and other sex-related depictions in all forms of exhibits, be it painting, sculpture or forms of literature. Then I happened to read a commentary of the Kama Sutra Vatsyayana, where the author says, description of sexual acts contained in this book is aimed to indicate to people what should not be done when temptation strikes. That did it. It told me how people are looking eagerly for ways to escape from the very mentioned sex or its gratification. This is being done even from places where sex is a constituent part, and how that did lead to the proliferation of the irrational. If it was not for the penchant for the irrational, how else could we have ever thought of, say, the need to raise an alarm about climate, when we know that we humans adapt to weather and attire themselves appropriately? We are coming to the last days of humans, and the appreciation by Murray seems to be quite fitting. David was all joy in giving his compliment. However, he said, a few more very significant questions remain. Who were the last generation of humans? Who were the early generations of superhumans and subhumans? How the transition took place? This is rather a hazy area of our history, David continued. From the beginning of its formation, the Earth seems to have undergone many cycles of magnetic pole reversal, each such occasion resulting in unforeseen events. A similar one towards the middle of the second millennium caused much havoc. It brought life to a standstill, in addition to altering the chemical structure of elements and hastening the deterioration of a few. What we now see is a totally new Earth, inhabited by new species, of all forms of life, all physical entities having disintegrated, and all written records having perished. The only source of previous information is in the atomic and subatomic records retrievable through quantum techniques like decoherence. From what I gather through such sources, the end of the human species was instantaneous. David took a small break to update his thoughts and continued. From the works done by Tanya, Joe, Keenan, and Murray, quite a few particularities of the human side of this transition get clarified. By the beginning of the second millennium, humans have started showing signs of irrational behavior, that too of a high degree. In many cases, though this produced the great potential for self-destruction, the number of humans that followed a rather sober lifestyle being of considerable degree, destructive nature of events was well contained, but the disparity in the rate of change of population, as brought out by Murray, was to have an effect. By the middle of the second millennium, Irrational outbursts reached its zenith and, those following a rather temperate lifestyle, its nadir. One insignificant trespass in some unknown corner was enough to light the final flame. The communication revolution, which brought the world populations a lot closer, did its share of destruction by bringing the end also, in one go. Why did I see my office and surroundings when I came out of the time machine? Is David fully right about the destruction? I went into thought. What, Murray, are you thinking of? This question by David suddenly woke me up to the realities. I briefly told him what my doubt is. How did human life continue? I asked. There is hardly any life here, at least when comparing to the past. David went on, using certain holographic technology, we are able to reconstruct what each and every atom, as well as subatomic particles like quarks, witnessed. This effectively opens to us the complete history of the universe, including the intervening or transition period after the end of human life. Winking at me, he added, your dissertation about the last days of humans is helping us a lot in correlating the information contained in subatomic particles, spin, flavor, etc., with certain unusual features of life. When we analyzed those features with the downloaded contents of your memory, it became clear to us that certain holographic-like recording is taking place in all subatomic particles. And with this result only, we were able to make the above reconstruction regarding the last days of humans. I was feeling great that an academic giant like David seemed to need my help. But what perplexed me, David's voice rose, is the strange situation, where only the superhumans have their memory missing some details of their past. In fact, in most cases, we even found physical traces of anatomy that could have been of use to earlier species, present in the new species though of no consequence. What could be the reason, for example, for you to be having these details regarding humans, which no superhuman is aware of? Now I turned into an epitome of pride. The future humans are seeking my help. Unbelievably though, I could come with the possible answer after a few hours of thinking and many cups of coffee. As I mentioned earlier, I began what I considered as my most important speech. Towards the end of their existence, humans happened to be always on the edge, for the reason that they became too weary of the opposite sex. David was all attention, and I went on, totally unaware of the real reason for being in such a precarious position. They used every imaginable trick to keep themselves fully occupied. This yielded many good things for the society, and they occupied themselves more in extolling the virtues of their occupation, both in words and in deeds. Wherever the results were inconvenient or destructive, they found fault with the one who did it. The need to keep one always occupied was never in doubt, notwithstanding the nature of results. Now I get it. David showed excitement. For you humans, the process of observing or discussing things, followed by deep reflection, was the standard path. Whether you wanted it that way or not, this always produced some effect, some output. Sometimes due to its intrinsic worth, and on other occasions owing to the value attributed by the society, the output comes to occupy a predominant position in one's thoughts, taking the center stage of life. What should have been in the prime position of one's life, sex and the merrymaking associated with it, got relegated to the dark, insignificant corners. David, I want your opinion. I thought of taking David into confidence. I have come here on a trip, the maiden trip of my time machine. I know, David intervened, that you succeeded in creating a virtual gravitational field, and to cause distortion in space-time. And by utilizing the Casimir force associated with quantum particles of gravity, you have made a machine that could travel through the dimensions of time and space. I was dumbfounded. Quietly I said, I want to travel back for a short visit. David agreed, provided I come back to rejoin them to bring their quest to a logical conclusion. I will send you in one of our time capsules. These work in a similar manner, but have the capability of faster than light travel. We will send you, reach a few days before your departure date, do your work and be back on the same day as you depart. I was so excited that I didn't notice David leaving. The thought of meeting my friend suddenly brought me to life. Has he passed necessary instructions? Will the time capsule be ready now? As I was busy with my thoughts, a young girl walked up. Murray, I am Veta. I will take you home and bring back. Are you ready to go? she asked. "The time capsule is ready for launch. You may follow me, please." She has already been briefed, I thought. I followed her to the Capsule Complex, which in fact consisted of an induction chamber, which always maintained the external environment, a gravicentric generator capable of generating gravitational fields of choice, and a working chamber where the traveller can remain and experience the dilation and compression of time and space. In addition to this was a control chamber which presumably was the domain of Veta. It also had a recreation area, bars, eateries and games chambers. "This way, please." Veta showed me my seat, and handing over a special suit, which was complete in all respects, instructed me, "Please leave all your existing clothes in this bin, where those will have to vaporize before we start." I did all that was told and settled into my seat. There were no seat belts or other attachments. Veta came to me and asked, "Are you ready to go?" "Yes, of course." My reply was enthusiastic. She took a sidekick, a little different one, made some gesture, turned to me and said, "Murray, we have already started our trip. Your sidekick is programmed to receive signals on the way and will act or prompt you to act. Please respond as necessary. Just attach it to your temple. Your brain will get updated. I suppose you're already aware of things. However, I shall repeat, our metabolic activities, just like when we are on firm ground, are divided into two, notional and imitable. Notional activities are those that do not produce material waste. All others are classified as imitable. Please continue the explanation." I was all the while living with many questions, and found no time to get those clarified. I butted in. "Listen," she continued, "in Super Earth, what we follow is waste-free living. You might have already seen the heart of this, the sidekick, which effectively controls all aspects of this way of life." She paused, thought for a while, and said, "Whatever are the imitable actions one needs to do, one has to place the sidekick in the appropriate position and think. The necessary data indicating fulfillment of the action gets recorded in your brain, giving you a real feeling of having completed that act. When you drank water, you might have noticed, we drink the standard liquid, which in fact is an active liquid that changes its composition depending on human needs. This liquid contains all the nourishment necessary at all times, but when we place the sidekick appropriately and signaled the brain that we just had water, its composition took the form of H2O. This goes for all our metabolic needs, once that have the potential to produce material waste." She stopped, turned to me and asked, "Are you following me?" "Of course," I replied. "So far things seem to be quite understandable. Please go on." "Now," she began, "let us talk about the notional needs. All intellectual and emotional needs fall into this category. Depending on the emotional build-up of each person, our central processing system computes the desired values for each emotion and other intellectual signals and keeps the respective sidekicks updated. Whenever individuals use one sidekick, the relevant soft signals, emotional, intellectual, etc., are also transferred to the brain. Now I know why I never felt homesick," I told her. After finishing her illuminating introduction, Veta went to occupy her station, that of the controller of the module commander. Unlike my trip to this part of the time, I did not feel any signs of launch or heavy movements. Everything appeared to be still till the voice of Veta announced, "In a few minutes, I'll be ready to dock this module to gravity. Murray, time to get ready and go." I was quite happy that we have reached our destination and it is time for me to step out. As the exit doors were opening, I was hoping to hear the familiar din of my area followed by delectable smell. But what greeted me was silence. Absolute silence and a deserted look. "Don't worry, Murray, I shall wait as I have been told by John. You may please go outside, walk around, check and come back. The time module will remain there," Veta reassured me. I wanted to change my dress, but as I was getting ready to change, I realized I was already as tired as I used to be before. I stepped out. The roads looked as though prepared for resurfacing. There were plenty of signs of explosions. It seemed mankind had just gone through a major war. I could see specks in the distance that looked like the time capsule in which I came. Many of those were circling the sky as though surveying this area. Many of the skyscrapers were missing, some partially destroyed, giving a forlorn feeling of destruction. I had to take rest somewhere. This was too much to take in. It was the most unexpected sight. I reached around for my backpack to grab my Sidekick, found it, and applied to my temple. Instantly things became clear to me. As my memory told me, what was noticeable by its absence all around was a human being. Where did they all go? What did I think? Yes, all of them perished in the Fifth World War, which took place a few days back. I was looking for survivors. Perhaps, like superhumans, they discontinued living on the surface and changed their living style to places high above. To find out more, I got up off my haunches, grabbed my Sidekick and started on my journey. I walked, and walked and walked. I reached the outskirts of the city. I crossed many damaged buildings. After a few hours, I finally reached a new area, a portion of the city that appeared to me as a familiar place. I walked into one of the buildings, which I thought was part of my office, and tried to push against a door. Before I could actually apply pressure, the door opened, bringing a huge concourse, but hardly recognizable in the dark ambience, to view. I knew that its electric supply was totally disrupted due to war. I couldn't find any more signs of life in its present or past forms, making further stay pointless. I just confirmed what was fed by Sidekick. The population of the planet has been wiped out, almost in full. Not even a single speck of life could be observed. Looked like nobody escaped the action that was initiated by one group, opposed by another group and supported by a third one. With mixed feelings, I walked back to where the time capsule was parked. I peeked all around with great feelings. I could neither see signs of life nor of death. The destruction has been complete and systematic. You cannot view the descendants of your peers bustling about the courtyard, I told myself. I came to a different part of the courtyard and looked around. With a deep sense of pity and regret, I proceeded back to the time capsule. I think Feta knew I will be back. The time module was there, exactly as it was when I got down. Feta was taking rest, and sensing my presence, she immediately came to the entry door. Welcome, Murray. I have been waiting for you. Ready for the trip back, I suppose. Ready. Perhaps I didn't sound enthusiastic enough. Feta asked, could you see what you wanted to see? Yes, I have had enough. I just wanted to get away. I have put this on autopilot. In a few minutes, we shall be bound for home. Any message? You want to contact Super Earth? I thought. Yes. Can you send this to John? I thought, simultaneously keeping the Sidekick on the computer table. The message went, briefly explaining my shock at the turn of events and asking John for further instructions. John didn't take much time. It is all right. I am aware of your difficulties. I've instructed Module Commander to plan your return journey at the earliest. See you soon, was his reply. Let us start our journey. Take your position. Feta was sounding enthusiastic. After setting the course and putting the module on autopilot, she came and sat next to me. I have been given some more information for updating you. She needed my attention. We superhumans, Feta began without any introduction, are fully capable in all the dimensions of life except in the knowledge of our past. And we have learned from our rare interactions with the humans that they are very good on matters regarding their distant past, though they show much less capacity to imbibe the present, let alone the future. With a discernible shift in her voice indicating greater emphasis, she continued, this is where you come in. As mentioned by John, your association has been observed to be beneficial for us, and now that you have already shown some deep insight on these things, it will be good to formalize that association, we all think. In short, you have proved yourself to be extremely valuable to this research. I was listening attentively. I agree, I said as she finished. As soon as we reach, John will be there to meet and clear you about the future programs. Feta went to take over the control to land the module, as they were fast approaching Super Earth. I didn't realize that we touched down till Feta came and announced, Super Earth is waiting for you. Welcome back to your adopted world. There they were there, Joe, Tanya, David, and Keenan, all with a great deal of excitement in life. Hope you had a wonderful trip. Joe set the ball rolling. I am sure, from the information with us, Murray had a good time, Though it didn't go as expected, Tanya chipped in. I couldn't restrain myself. Without hiding my annoyance, I asked, if you were so sure of the outcome, why is it that nobody told me before the trip? We knew the fate of the Earth. We didn't think it is so complete an end, Joe said. But we also wanted you to have first-hand knowledge. True. My forlorn feelings overshadowed the well-conducted trip, and that made me forget the productive aspects of this journey, including the highest professional conduct by the module commander, Feta. I managed to tell John, whom I just saw coming in. We are all very happy that you are back with us. I have been discussing with them. We will continue our efforts to clear the questions in connection with the transition. John was all serious. Of humans to superhumans. I thought to reconfirm. And the lessons to learn about life, if history should not be made to repeat, John added. Humbled by his foresight, and feeling that much more related to be sought by him, I said, I am ready to start again. Just to refresh memory and to put all of us on the same grid, John began. We discussed that the theories in vogue do not describe how the actual division of humans into two streams took place, what happened during the transition period, how the basic humans reacted to changes, and how early they realized that changes are in the offing, etc. After stopping for an instant, he continued, Murray gave us a sturdy theory, which beautifully linked the sexual performance of humans, the newly introduced concoction called Viagra, and the possibility of human race dividing into two streams based on how open-minded would have been the response to this discovery. In Murray's absence, we did some investigations into the transition period. That is, the dispersion of the human race into superhuman and subhuman. Let us now see where we stand. We will begin with Tanya. John stopped. Well, human race, Tanya began, from the initial days used to be constituted by people of varying attributes, like different physical qualities like height, weight, color, etc., different mental ability, and talents. Though this is true for all living beings, for the reasons covered by Murray earlier, humans readily use these changes for abstract reflections, in the process giving rise to distinct identities. As a natural consequence, those of similar identity started grouping together as it would have greatly helped the abstract transactions that were dear to them. And as a result, later generations would have found human life progressing as distinct races, unlike all other forms of life. And race took the form of an intrinsic or unqualified fact, I thought, respectful of Tanya. Keenan took over. The most notable thing I have been able to observe is an increasing gap in intellectual capacity between one group of humans who are closely associated with a free, women-friendly society, and all the others who can be easily associated with a temperament totally unfriendly to women. All of them follow female repressive measures to some extent. The women-friendly societies could be found to be encouraging women to take an active part in all activities where a woman does not have to act as a woman, whereas others practice repressive actions either as a physical intervention into female sexuality, like FGM, or as other socio-cultural norms for an altruistic intrusion into womanhood. I have found such measures have been used with greater abandon as they come closer to the transition. Joe added, the women-friendly society could be seen to be engaging in social transactions, especially the intellectual ones, to an irrational degree. As a result of this, large-scale changes happen to their society and its lifestyle at a fast pace, and they term it as development. As far as those societies that are not so friendly to a woman are concerned, the desire to suppress women becomes so high that here, it is the society's collection of repressive measures that go beyond the limits of sanity. The proliferation of the irrational becomes so widespread, anyone who has been a witness to early centuries where independent outlook and nonconformist views were tolerated and sometimes even respected as signs of progress, would find it impossible now to believe that this is the same world. It was the turn of David to sum up and give a complete and an overall picture of the transition. Let us see what we were able to learn about the last days of the human race and the first days of the superhuman. Murray, before his trip to his future, did explain to us quite a good deal. I think that is a correct description of those days, except for 2 points. 1. Large-scale attack on those portions of the female anatomy that can be linked to sexual satisfaction. And 2. the proliferation of the irrational on a large scale. After a brief glance around the room and assessing reactions from us all, he continued, "Let us come to the first point, the attack on femininity." Later humans seem to have realized the presence of this and understood the possibility of dangers resulting from it. But rather than accepting it as a part of the male's desire for supremacy, hardly any effort could be seen in confronting this, a surprising deviation from the inquisitiveness of the human race. I, therefore, began a fresh study, from where Murray left off, on how humans confronted the whole issue of displeasure in the matters of sex. It is possible to say, as usual, David was at his eloquent best, having decided to call it today that the earliest of humans, on noticing signs of dissatisfaction in the female sex, would have resorted to deep reflection. They wouldn't have failed to notice the universal nature of such dissatisfaction, the state, during mating season, of females of each and every species of life, loudly announce. This would have horrified them of the imminent agony, if the human females too, start expressing their displeasure. A plethora of measures could have emerged. Chapter 6, the climax. David went on with his analysis. I think religion is the first step in this direction, the oldest and the most significant one among the many clever maneuvers adopted to guard against the possible demonstration of acute frustration and disappointment by women while ensuring that no man is denied a woman. Significantly, as you can see, all religions approach this issue in a thorough, comprehensive manner, confronting it at all levels, right from the very source of frustration. To begin with, all religions make it more or less mandatory for the woman to be happy and celebrating ever after, once a husband has been found for her. This, along with the merriment and revelry connected with the wedding, in addition to priming oneself in the direction of contentment, discounts the need for any other form of pleasure to be necessarily derived from this union. Having thus absolved the man of any responsibility to bring pleasure to the female member of the union, as the next step, to doubly ensure this, the woman is made to grieve ever after, once she happens to lose her husband. Going one more step further, you may kindly note, the male-female union outside marriage is made hell for the woman such that rather than hoping to derive any pleasure from the usual activities expected to be a part of such gatherings, to escape from being caught itself shall become pleasure enough for the woman, absolving the man of any responsibility towards the female member even in such impermissible unions. To top it all, in preparing the ground for the man to achieve success always in the performance of his manly functions, some religions go a step ahead by declaring it a sin for the woman to feel carnal pleasure when cohabiting with her man. This well thought about the move, I am sure, is the smartest one so far. David continued, all religions nurture offices or practices designed to help the man, even further in this regard, either by having a full-time engagement or through other passive means. One such is to make unmanding positions such as Vestal Virgins, nuns, Sadhvi, Theologian, Bhikkhuni, Devadasi etc., greatly respected in society, making such careers a very good alternative for the women to choose over other activities that may lead the males into performing. Another one is that no religion is without specifying dates, times, places and other restrictions for stipulating how, when and where the male-female union is impermissible. In addition to all this is the possibility of effecting a reduction in man's clientele, by according much sought after status to virginity, celibacy, chastity and other male-friendly incarnations of the female form. Not stopping at that, David went on, humans in their struggle to bring forth amelioration in the male's burden of performance, seems to have had their cup always full. I mean such necessity could arise throughout the year. Hence I think, not leaving matters to chance as any of the above measures may fail to work, higher than all these was the primary dictum they had followed. It was the central theme of each and every religion that sexual relationship, except between man and wife, is a great sin. You may please note here the most abominable of all practices that were followed by humans of any religion are those associated with these kinds of sins, stoning an errant woman to death, shutting the woman offender in a cage with poisonous snakes, forcing the guilty woman to parade through the streets with head shaven, and many other customs of humans, stand as examples. The severity with which religions deal with deviants in sexual matters, in comparison with offenders in other walks of life who are dealt with in a rather mild manner, is yet another pointer to the dread of performance human ancestors maintained. Also, in all the ancient texts, though there are places where a man is regarded as highly praiseworthy for his talents with the sword or pen or other aspects of physical or mental ability, there is no mention of a man known for his sexual prowess. In stark contrast, the very same literature is overflowing with rich stories of women taking the roles of courtesans, singers, dancers, and others. In fact, stories of women well known for their appropriateness as a companion, especially for physical intimacy, celebration of their fame and renown among women of such disposition and other qualities of comparable acclaim, constitute a good part of the recorded history. Here again, please note how carefully the early humans went about this. David said, "The above discussion effectively sends a subtle but firm command to all, that the capacity to perform well is not at all a matter to be considered when assessing the qualities of a man, though while describing a woman's quality, such compliments can always be accorded the pride of place, which perhaps, David gave his assessment, was necessary to keep the flame of life alive, in the company of non-performing males. Now I come to an important part played by humans in prolonging their end." David continued in a more serious tone, "But thing is to be noted is, the human forefathers were considerate enough to concede the possibility, nay, necessity, of women going astray that too at a greater rate, owing to the realization that no man can offer enduring companionship with good performance. This, when further compounded by the women's need for such a comfort, did have the potential to make man's life a busy one indeed. Unless something is done, they would have realized, man's future is going to be full of horror." David paused. "He is talking about the pre-Neanderthal age, I thought." "Hence," David resumed, "a two-pronged strategy seems to have been in force, as can be made out clearly, to impose total control over all matters connected with sex, sexual urge and the boundless vista of its gratification. 1. The pleasant, subdued measure. This mostly consists of indirect steps aimed to alleviate the perils of performance. The most notable and scientific in approach is the solution contained in spreading the idea that the joy one receives by bringing great pleasure to one's mate is the most important aspect to be reckoned with, as far as this activity go. Towards this, all ancient cultures seem to have taken ample efforts to popularize sex-related organs. This approach, nowadays known as the implicit memory technique of priming, is a major topic of psychological research. The phallic symbol, very well known in India and equally widespread in other parts of the world with its worship spreading across a large portion of the habitable globe, seems to have flourished for many centuries in Egypt, Syria, Persia, Asia Minor, Greece, and Italy. In Mexico, other bas-reliefs were also found which, like those of India, represented the male-female union in various ways. And 2. The unpleasant, direct measure. This mainly consists of a frontal attack on female sexuality, the institution of a multitude of religious customs, ceremonies, and codes, each more occupying than the other, especially on matters related to womanhood, stand apart in this regard. One notable aspect of this approach is that no space is left for independent reflections as far as the general populace goes, presumably to maintain the scary nature of such observances unscathed. "Let me now come to the answer to John's queries," David went on to say. "Quite a few of these practices are in addition heavily constraining, with many of those aimed or contrived to neutralize the organs perceived to be responsible for sexual pleasure. In a few cases, the measures adopted involve physical removal of such guilty organs, which perhaps has allowed recognition of the futility they experienced, of all other methods of suppression, in constraining or liquidating the natural urge. And it was invariably followed by solemn declarations to the effect that the continued observance of these is the most crucial obligation in life, for a desirable and peaceful existence, especially after death and rebirth. This is the forerunner of FGM, and, after a pause, he said, "The above-mentioned pleasant measures, I think, evolved over time into what we observed among humans, as the affinity towards the irrational." "Excellent," John remarked, "this is scholarly. But one question troubles me," said David. "Humans could be seen to be entertaining a plethora of interests and have left their footprints in anything and everything, mostly towards betterment. How come such peculiar features as these escape their attention? It defies logic, certainly when we consider the inimitable contributions of humans in all other matters of life. Yes, you're right, John butted in. What remarks Murray made about humans' reactions to sex, especially the male's shortfall in performance, makes full sense now. For we can easily see that, in all other species, the male approaches the activities of daily living in a manner conducive to maximizing its work or minimizing its stay with other members of the family. For example, the male always catches a smaller prey or sometimes lets the prey manage its escape. This necessitates the male to get busy with hunting, more often. In short, taking life goal. When it came to humans, taking life goal took an altruistic turn. Male humans especially so, seem to have used their creative talents to the core, to find new objects, new relationships, new actions and other abstractions capable of delaying or reducing the occasions where one may be expected to perform. This might have been their primary defense, that one is busy with something more important. And the proliferation of human interests in occupation show two things. 1. It worked well. 2. There never was a let-up. Collecting his thoughts, John concluded, out of fear I think, humans did not examine the sexual functions much. Perhaps the thought of performance prevented discussion about sexual issues except for matters concerning reproduction. I was feeling great, having won the hearts of my successors. John looked around and continued. A discernible difference in one's approach to life happened to occur between the humans who were following pretty, oppressive measures to fight against the male's shortfall, and those who were more at home with the rather collaborative approach at this issue. Excellent, I butted in. Your inference seems to be the right answer to what led to the changing patterns of sexual modesty as years went by. The depiction of sex-related imagery in cave paintings, statues, etc., show remarkable variation in nudity, etc., indicating shifts in the moral stance of ancient societies. Thank you, Murray. John was visibly happy. As a result, the population of each took divergent paths, those at home with oppressive measures rapidly increasing their numbers, and the population of others decreasing, as years went by. Wars and skirmishes were there, both of small and large scales, and with the destructive potential of weapons increasing. The end happened without any warning. The subhumans of today are descended from a few of the former who happened to survive, and we superhumans followed the collaborative ones who lived on. Between us, superhumans, and the subhumans, though there are only a few generations of physical separation, the difference in outlook is of millenniums. Casting his glance across the room, John said, the first generations of superhumans successfully took upon themselves the task of delinking thought from the brain concentrating solely on the metabolic needs. Then they introduced the Sidekick as a ubiquitous extension that performed all the remaining activities, that too with elan. With their background in information technology, relieving the brain of much unnecessary data manipulating the ones of interest was easily achieved, it seems. All the successes we have achieved as well as those to follow, are in fact due to this only. This, I think, clears all the outstanding doubts I posed. All were silent. John continued, I would not have been able to deduce these things, had it not been for the excellent appreciation provided by Murray. The next task I give myself is to enable Murray to visit his buddies. Count me in. Tanya was visibly excited. Of course, all of us are in. Joe, Keenan and David shouted in one voice. But I am left with one significant question, the answer to which can untangle a few issues for us too. How come the humans happen to be making a lot of errors prior to doing anything right, unlike all other forms of life? Similarly, why is there a long and checkered history behind each and every discovery or invention? In this also, I think Murray could be of immense help. And there ended my hope, heralding the beginning of a new hope. About the author. He has taken to writing on retirement from Indian Navy in 2013 after a lengthy career, during which he had the good luck to come across his colleagues, subordinates and superiors, a real, wide cross-section of India, and quite a few more from the rest of the world. Every second person, during those years, that one had to do business with, thus being from entirely different backgrounds and consequently opening up a kaleidoscopic view of society, he couldn't but reflect on human transactions in many colours, each of them leading to a horde of imponderables, human or non-human, living and non-living. Other books by this author. Please visit your favourite ebook retailer to discover other books by Roy T. James. The Unsure Male. A bold, new look at the enigma of life that explains everything one needs to know. Cast the Unexplored Territories. A fresh look at the most perennial social problem in India. Glimpses of autobiography. A bunch of people, their impressions, and thoughts that would have found a place in his autobiography, had he wrote one. Hubs that provoke an oblique view of all that we consider as the most cherished values in life. More hubs that provoke some more views of all that we consider as the most cherished vows in life. Easy Route to Peace. A collection of essays proposing a few quick and easy ways to simplify the complex life we have made for ourselves.